You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, Minisode number 546. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad you're here, as usual. And I have weird feelings about today's minisode. Just being honest. First and foremost, again, thank you. I'm still getting messages from you guys about episode 540, my minisode that I released about, my soon-to-be ex-husband and I deciding to end our marriage. All kinds of love and support from you guys saying that things like you can relate and have been through what I'm going through. Some of you are in a spot where you're not sure if you should stay or you should go. Just thank you for also your vulnerability and sharing your stories with me. I appreciate that so much. And as you probably know, if you've spent any time on social media, you know how the social media algorithms work and what kind of shows up for you based on whatever you're going through in your life. There are some videos that have come across my feed and one quote that I saved that spoke to me on this topic of relationships, just generally. And I wanted to share them with you. I am going to, instead of playing it here, which is hard to do, I just always want to give credit to the creator. So I've transcribed them, and I have also put the links to each of most of them are TikTok videos, to the direct video, so you can go and look at it and save it or share it or whatever it is. They just really stood out to me. So I'm going to share those in a minute. But before I do you want a personalized signed copy of one of my books? I bet you might. I rarely do this, but I have some extra inventory, and books are heavy and they take up a lot of space. So if you want one, please know I rarely do this. You can head on over to andreaowen.com/links. That's where all of my good stuff is, including how to get a personalized signed copy of either 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, or Make Some Noise. And even on the form, if you want me to leave you a specific message, or if you're giving it as a gift and you want to leave me to leave a specific message for your friend or loved one, I'm happy to do that. So there you go. There's that first. I am going to preface this by saying very clearly, for legal reasons, these transcriptions of these videos I may or may not be able to relate to these in my own life. And if I do, I am only talking about my experience in relationships, not the other person's. These are hypothetical. Okay? All right. The very first one, it was a man by the name of J.P. Sachs, S-A-X-E. I'm new to his work. I do not know of him. And it looks like he was being interviewed. Again, these links are in the show notes directly to these particular videos. And he said the following, quote, "I think for a long time, I thought if I was deeply in love with a person, that was enough. I look for 3 things in my loving relationships. Number 1, you have to be deeply in love with who someone is as an individual. Number 2, do I love the way you love me? Do I love the way you show up for me? The way you support me? The way you show me affection? the way you are my partner? And number 3, do I love the kind of life and what you are trying to create? Because for this to work, I am going to have to create it with you. End quote. So, Mr. JP Sachs, thank you for that wisdom bomb. And I, can relate to the first part. I thought for a long time being deeply in love with a person, that was enough. And mostly, in my teens and 20s, I thought that was enough. And as I got older, I realized pretty quickly, especially, after my first marriage fell apart, I thought, oh, this is definitely not enough. Definitely not enough. You can't love harder to fix major relationship problems. You can try, which we'll get into that later, but it definitely is not enough. And it was the second one where he says, number 2 is, do I love the way you love me? Do I love the way you show up for me, the way you support me, the way you show me affection, and the way you are my partner? I think in many people's experience, this is where we compromise, make excuses, and self-abandon. Do I love the way you love me? Do I love the way you show up for me, the way you support me, the way you show me affection, the way you are my partner? I wonder if this is the question where some of us answer it and we're like, sometimes, or good enough, or in the beginning, yes. And then maybe things changed. Again, this is just things for you to think about, especially for those of you who have messaged me and said, my Minisode a few weeks ago has just made you think about a lot of things. All right. And then the last part that he says, do I love the kind of life you and what you're trying to create? Because for this to work, I am going to have to create it with you. And that's interesting because that's a partnership. And I think what he's speaking to there is values. I talk about values all the time. You know this. And I will quick recap. Ask yourself the questions, what's important to me and what's important about the way I live my life? And I think for sure there can be slight variations in values within partnerships. But I think when they're out of alignment, it is really hard to work through that. It is really hard to love the kind of life that your partner is trying to create, because you're right alongside with them, when it's not the same kind of life that you're trying to create. And this can look like all sorts of different things, which I won't get into. But yeah, something to think about. All right. The second video was from, I always hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Ayanla Van Zant, one of Oprah's people. Didn't she have, I think she had a show that was called Ayanla Fix My Life or something like that. I don't know, DM me on Instagram. Let me know, was that a thing? And she was being interviewed, and I've edited a little bit for brevity. Quote, I just ended a relationship, a 14-year relationship at my age. You know why? After 14 years, I recognize he doesn't love me the way I want to be loved. I just don't want to be loved like that. You see, I don't get to tell people how to love me. I get to see how they love me and then choose if I want to participate. So for 14 years, I was hoping, okay, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. He's going to get it. And then I said, you know what? He ain't getting it. And that's okay. I don't choose to participate in the way he loves. I have a bunch of degrees, and it took me 14 years to get that. Thank God I couldn't get pregnant. So, you get to make that choice and look at carefully and consciously and honestly, ruthlessly, what you did and how you did it so that you don't do that shit ever again. End quote. This one knocked me over too. I think that as especially people who are seekers, who are self-aware, the further you get into this work of really understanding yourself and choosing yourself and accepting the sort of standards that you have in your life in terms of your relationships, both romantic and not romantic, I think you really start to take this kind of inventory that she's talking about here. And by that time, a lot of us are way into relationships, right? We have committed, we love someone, we have maybe created an entire family and an entire life. So to have the realization that she was just talking about, and she was in a 14-year relationship and figured this out. And I love too how she's talking about, she has all this success, she has all this education, and it took her a long time to figure that out. Yeah, it's a huge and I think painful revelation, because when we realize that, many times we have a decision to make. Are we going to, what did she say? He's going to get it. He's going to get it. He's going to get it. How long do we wish and hope for that to happen? And in fairness, I think some people do get it. I do. I really, really do. I think some people get it through their own personal work, through therapy, through especially like dealing with their own issues from their family of origin, because all of us bring that in to our romantic relationships, all of us. So if you have a partner who's willing to do that work, that's amazing. And I will say it over and over again. It does happen. It does work sometimes. They do get it. And sometimes they don't. And like she said, you get to choose if you want to participate. And you don't have to. You don't have to. So I highly encourage you to go watch that video, because she's just so great. She's just so enigmatic and dynamic. And I love watching her talk and drop her wisdom. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back with 2 more videos. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. Okay, I lied. I actually have 3 more videos. That's how much the algorithm is after me. Hot on my tail. All right, this one is from a man named Danny Morell. I have no idea about most of these people, so please forgive me if you go and start following them and they are wackadoos. I have no idea. They have not been vetted. Like I would vet somebody coming on my show as a guest. So it again, just random videos that came into my feed, and I like what they said in the moment on this particular topic. So Danny Morell says, quote, "If you are with someone who is not aware of their emotions, someone that doesn't have emotional intelligence, awareness, or regulation, get ready, because you are going to live your life in a constant state of unnecessary stress, which leads to illness, which leads to disease." And most people don't understand the seriousness of this, because if you are constantly in a space where your partner is triggered or angered or responsive or reactive or jealous or defensive, then what happens to you? You are getting a message very clearly, and that message says, hey, it's not safe for you to speak your truth, because if and when you do speak your truth, you are going to get a reaction. And that reaction, that energy, is going to cause you to quiet down and never speak your truth. Get ready, because 6, 7, 10 years, your body is going to start to swell up with inflammation, because the body is storing all of that energy and you've been afraid of letting go of it. And by the way, take ownership of it, because that fear is yours. No matter how deep and dark and powerful their reaction is, you can still speak your truth. And yet the reality is, as your body gets inflamed, you start opening your body up to unnecessary illness and disease. End quote. Okay, I'm going to say this. I don't know how much scientific research there is to back this up. I want to say that first and foremost. I do know that Dr. Gabor Mate wrote a book called, and he may have co-authored it with someone, I'll have to find it and put the link in the show notes, called When the Body Says No. And I saw an excerpt of it on Instagram where, I will put that in the show notes as well, where it was someone who was quoting the book, and he talks about this. He talks about, and he cites research that shows a higher prevalence among heterosexual relationships where the woman has anxiety about the relationship, I'm generalizing here, and with higher incidence of autoimmune disorders. So there's that, which is inflammation. Yeah, I haven't dove into the research on that, but I find that anecdotally interesting. I also want to say this too. In his quote, he says, if you are constantly in a space where your partner is triggered, angered, responsive, reactive, jealous, or defensive, these are all things too that can happen as a child with parents. And then usually what happens is people tend to end up in romantic relationships where that's repeated because it's familiar. And also what he didn't mention in that list of things is also what can create kind of the shutdown is, when we speak our truth and we are met with dismissiveness or silence, not being understood at all. I think for some people it's, gaslighting. There's all these different ways that can cause stress in our relationships that we're met with. And this goes both ways too. I'm not saying that that only our partners are doing this. We all do this in relationships. And the key is to see it and try to have better ways of communication, better ways of listening, better ways of showing up in our partnerships. That's like the whole point. I have a feeling more research is going to be done on that in the next couple of decades. And I also predict that we will see more and more of a correlation between the health of our relationships and the health of our bodies. There's already research that shows that our happiness is tied to the health of our relationships. So, it wouldn't be shocking that it transcends into our physical bodies. All right, my friends. This next one is from one of my favorite TikTok creators, Anna Del Castillo. I need to see if she'll come on the podcast. She's a coach and she's just so incredibly wise. She's a fellow silver-haired, middle-aged lady like me. And I love her work. Okay, so she says, quote, if there's one real piece of advice I can give you, it's this. The crippling need to be understood by people who consistently show you they can barely understand themselves will handcuff you to the most awful, painful people in relationships. They don't understand you. They never will. No amount of you fighting for them to see you will ever make that happen. Please, please, for your own sanity, give up the fantasy of you ever being understood or seen by them and walk away. Mourn, grieve, and then find people who will see you. End quote. That whole thing is just true and amazing. And the sentence where she says, no amount of fighting for them to see you will ever make that happen. My first thought was, no amount of fighting or begging them to see you will ever make that happen. And again, I do think that there are some few exceptions. I think that there are the few, the brave, who see that their partner is in pain and this is how they want to be loved and need to be loved and accepted, and they do the work. But I think there comes a point in relationships where the person who is feeling the need to be understood and fighting and begging to be seen and heard in their relationship, where they know it's not going to happen. Kind of like Ayanla's video that I quoted a couple videos ago. I think you just know. I think you just know. And for those of you listening who I might be speaking to, yeah, I think you get to a point where you just know. Because women's intuition is something else. Can I go off on a little tangent there for a minute? I saw something on social media last night, and it was about angels. I've had several guests on. My friend Laura Michelle Powers is one of them, just, who are really intuitive and do readings and are, identify as psychic mediums and the such. And such, not and the such, and such. And I have been, as I drag myself through this time in my life, I keep telling my friends, like, I'm in the weeds and the weeds are on fire. They are. It's an inferno, these weeds. But I keep seeing the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 1234 at least once a day, you guys, at least, or 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3. I see those consecutive 3 or 4 numbers, and I have for months. Never before that, never noticed. So I'm taking that as a sign from my guides and angels, which I've always known have kind of been around. So anyway, back to this video I saw last night that was talking about asking your guides and angels to show up, because they really show up when we invite them in, like when we know they're there and we ask for whatever it is that we want or need. And so she said, make sure you go outside and ask for a sign. You can ask for a specific sign within a certain amount of time. And that's what she does. And, she said it showed up. And then there's all these comments saying like, oh, it worked for me. And so anyway, the next day, which was this morning, I was on my morning walk with my feisty German Shepherd, Astrid. And I thought about that video, and there was a part of me that was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do it. Because, there's that fear of like, what if it doesn't work? And then I'm going to feel completely let down by just spirituality in general. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to give it I am going to make the odds so ever in my favor. So maybe I'll say, show me a sign by the end of the month. Any sign. Show me an animal, any animal, by the end of the month, and I'll know that you're here. So then I kind of laughed and was like, not really how it works, and not really how I want it to work. So I just sort of did what my intuition was like, here's what you need to ask for. So I consider blackbirds and cardinals my, kind of power and reminder that the people who have passed before me, family members, loved ones, people who cared about me, that it's them and my guides and spirits and angels that are my guardian angels. And I hadn't remember seeing one, a blackbird or a cardinal, in probably at least a week or so. And so I was like, okay, that's safe, So I said, I'm outside in nature with my dog, and I said out loud on my walk, guides and angels, if you can hear me, send me a sign, show me a blackbird or a cardinal by the end of the day. And you guys, I didn't even get the whole sentence out by the end of the day. And in my mind, before I said end of the day, I was going to say by the end of the week. And I'm recording this on a Monday. And I thought, well, I have a whole week, so that's safer, And my intuition was like, nope, by the end of the day. And I didn't even get the whole sentence out. And I swear on everything that I love, a cardinal flew in from our left across the street, low to the ground, probably 30 feet in front of us. Even my dog was like, whoa, what was that? A bright red cardinal. And I burst into tears. So that is my invitation to you. If you are in a hard situation, if you are having a hard time making a decision, if you are worried that you can't do something that's difficult or that's going to put you in the weeds that are on fire, I encourage you to lean into whatever spirituality works for you. Maybe mine doesn't. Maybe you have a different kind. And, we need all the help we can get in times of fiery weeds. We need all the help we can get. Okay, we're going to take one more quick break, and then I'm going to come back and comment on Adele Castillo's video, and then I have one more. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com. I think the only thing I want to mention about Adele Castillo's video around, the crippling need to be understood by people who consistently show you they can't. I think it wasn't until I was in my late 30s, 40s, did I even know what that meant. Being understood and seen and witnessed and heard. I think this is the foundation of connection. And I think there's a pretty big spectrum for connection. I think you can have connection with someone on a smaller scale, someone you meet at the grocery store and maybe you share an experience or whatever it is. But the kind of connection that I'm talking about that we're looking for in these more intimate relationships, whether it's a relationship with someone in your family or a deep friendship or a intimate partnership, that kind of connection, that being witnessed, I like to call it, that person is a soft place to land for you. You feel safe showing up with all of your shadows and illnesses and difficulties and big, big challenging feelings like grief and sorrow and rage. Sorry. I think when you meet someone, again, in any relationship, who can show up for you and have it feel like a safe container for you. I remember
experiencing that for the first time and thinking like, oh, is this what, is this an aspect of love that like I didn't know existed? Like that type of connection. I mean, I don't have the right words to put together for how truly intimate that is and vulnerable. To me, that is the peak of vulnerability. Because when you show up with all of that stuff that makes us human, that's messy, and you are met with not what you need, the drop into shame is pretty fierce. I think we've all probably experienced that. And when we experience it, it makes us never want to try it again. And I think this is a whole nother conversation about friendships and things like, and boundaries and things like that. But, for me personally, even just for a long time, I've come a long way with it, but even crying in front of other people, it was just crippling shame. Was so scared to do it for fear of what I was going to be met with on the other side. And so for, to be in friendships where people, it just doesn't even faze them, and they invite it and welcome it, like that type of connection, the way that our brains are wired for that is wild. And it makes me believe that this is how we survive. Like this is about our survival. We are engineered to not only show up for each other, but to have people who fully see us and understand our humanity. And also, I want to say this in defense of people who don't show up for us. Sometimes I don't think it's a matter of them being, bad people or mean or anything like that. I think sometimes they can't. It's just the way they're wired. They might be neurodivergent in some way where they can't. And again, it's not to blame and shame them. It's up to us, as I've mentioned in some of these other videos that I would transcribe to you, that it's up to us to decide if we're going to participate or not. It doesn't make it any less painful that they can't or won't show up for us, or their reaction might still be painful. But again, it becomes up to us to set that boundary, whatever that boundary looks like. Okay, and the last one is by a woman named Jen Funk that I saw on Instagram. And she says, quote, "I don't care how good he is in bed. I don't care how funny he is. I don't care how good he smells. All I care about for you is that he can navigate conflict with you with kindness, grace, and good boundaries." End quote. And please excuse the heteronormativity of some of these videos as I transcribe them to you. Of course, this can go in any kind of relationship, not just heterosexual ones. And yeah, navigating conflict. I think you really, in a romantic relationship specifically, I think you really get to know, any kind of flags, no matter what color they are, based on a few things. When shit hits the fan in someone's life, maybe they lose their job, maybe they lose a loved one, just something difficult happens, how everyone handles it, how they show up for each other, and just navigating conflict within the relationship, because it's going to happen. You are going to eventually have conflict. We all know this. We're adults. How does everyone handle it? Again, I always recommend the work of John Gottman and his wife, Julie Gottman. The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work is a great book about navigating conflict and just relationships in general. But kindness, grace, and good boundaries. It's a tall order. It's a tall order for people raised in this culture. And by people, I mean people who identify as men. They weren't exactly raised in a culture that taught them to navigate conflict with grace, kindness, and good boundaries. So, as adults, now's the time to learn how to do that. And I'm just going to leave you with this one. It was just a quote, one of those like quote memes on Instagram. It's Nakia Homer. I don't know if that's how you say their name, but I'm pretty sure that's might be how you pronounce it. And the quote says, "It is possible to feel bad about making a decision that is good for you." And then in the caption, she said, "Honor your feelings and don't turn back." So again, the quote is, "It is possible to feel bad about making a decision that is good for you." And I saw that and I thought, well, that makes me feel better. Because I think both things can be true. I think you can make one of the most difficult decisions of your life and be both relieved that you've done it and maybe see glimpses of what's possible on the other side, even though it might feel light years away. And you know that the weeds of fire that you have to make your way through are going to be some of the most difficult weeds you have ever made your way through. I think you can have that, all of it, and also feel really bad and sad and also, wonder if you made the right decision and have like moments of, oh my God, what have I done? Did I make a bad choice? Should I have just stayed where I was? Because I think, we might have moments of, if I had stayed where I was, at least that discomfort had gotten familiar and it wasn't as painful, like the moment to moment. But then we remember, like, as a whole, how painful it was. Yeah, it's possible to feel bad about making a decision that is good for you. I don't know if we ever make these like really difficult decisions and 100% of the process feels amazing. I think it's complicated. It's like one of the most complicated things ever. So if that's you in any of this that I've talked about over the last 36-ish minutes, I see you. And I hear you in all of your complicated emotions and stomach aches and crying into the pillow and screaming in your car or the shower. Yeah. And I hope that I can in some way be your soft place to land. I hope that I can. And I hope more than anything that you find those people, because I know what the pain feels like of not being seen and understood and all of your anxieties and complicated feelings. And I don't want that for anyone. I would never wish that on my worst enemy. So I hope that you find your guides and angels. I hope that you find a decision. If you're having a hard time making one, I hope you find the people who can be your soft place to land. So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up here with me. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Thank you for supporting the show. I just love you guys. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. See you next time.
Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.